Good morning, Kahal Kadosh, Beruchim Habayim to everybody. We apologize to the live audience of iTorah.com. Today we started a bit later than usual, but the class is going on. Today is the 20th day of Sivan, May 31st, 2021, Memorial Day weekend, I believe it's called today.
Yes.
Correct. So today's class has been graciously sponsored by Eli and Orit Mimun, Le'ilui Nishmat, her beloved father, Yoel Ben Leah Rokas Alav Shalom, that regretfully returned his soul to the Almighty a few days ago, and the family is observing the Shiv'ah period in Eretz Israel. It's on that to the words of Torah, the Neshama will have an Aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. Today's Gemara discusses a very fascinating topic concerning the behavior of rabbis going to parties and going to events, and who the person should choose to marry. So both topics are important. And if anybody is affected by what the Gemara is going to say, don't take it to heart, because at the end of the day, we are here to learn. But I give you the summary. Step number one, the Gemara writes that rabbis cannot go to every party that they are invited to go and to attend. Obviously, why? I think the short answer is that there are different parties. For example, there is a Berit Milah, correct? So you go to the Berit Milah, you stay a few minutes, you say Berachot, you move on. You go to a wedding, you go to the Chuppah, you stay for a few minutes, you see how is the environment, you decide to stay. Different parties. For example, there is a Berit Milah, correct? So you go to the Berit Milah, you stay a few minutes, you say Berachot, you move on. You go to a wedding, you go to the Chuppah, you stay for a few minutes, you see how is the environment, you decide to stay or you decide to go. But if you go to every party, let's say somebody says, Rabbi, I'm making in my home Super Bowl party with shi'ur, with mincha and arvit. Sounds kosher, but that's something that a rabbi, and I'm sure that some may not be happy to what I'm going to say now, but the Gemara debates discussing if a rabbi can go to an engagement party. That's the question of the Talmud. It says, Kol sa'udah she'ena shel mitzvah, any meal that is not a concept of mitzvah related, Talmidei Chachamim cannot participate. So comes the Gemara, and please, I want you to sit down, because what the Gemara is going to say is going to be dropping a bucket of ice on our head. You ready? You sitting? You standing? I think you should sit.
I'm not happy with this.
You put on the bulletproof vest? Okay, Hazar. So he already knows me.
I am not happy about what you're going to say.
Okay, no, wait. I know you're related. You're Kohen. So it says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, is it considered, and don't take it the wrong way, please. Let me do the reading and then I'll explain. This Rabbi Yochanan says, Kegon, bat Kohen le'Israel. The daughter of a Kohen that marries a non-Kohen. Okay? So you are in the boat. That's your case, right?
Yeah.
But you're a nice guy. So you're covered. Or, for example, Bad Talmid Hacham li'am ha'ares. Or the daughter of a Hacham to a simple person. Now, why the Gemara, according to this opinion, calls them like they are not really the best marriages to have? It's a scary topic. Let's be honest. Today, this concept does not apply, with one exception. A case that I was the eyewitness in Argentina, going back 25 years ago, a bit more. What is the case? The case that the Gemara discusses, Bat Kohen le'Israel, the daughter of a Kohen marrying a non-Kohen. What's the problem with this? It's kosher. Both of them are Yehudim. Both of them are Jewish. So why the Gemara looks at it in a problematic way. Comes Rashi and it says,
That's
Bat Kohen, the daughter of a Kohen, צריכה להינשא לכהנים. It says the proper marriage for a Kohen's daughter is to marry another Kohen. Why? בלא לפגוע משפחתה להינשא לישראל. Not to create like a blemish to her family. Now, I ask you a question. What blemish are we talking about? Let's clarify this. What is the halakha if a daughter of a Kohen marries a Kohen? Her are Kohanim. What happens if a daughter of a Kohen marries an Israel? The children are Israel. And in Torah aspects, what is their hierarchy? How does it work? Kohen, the top. Levi, Israel. Now, I gave you this disclaimer before I started to read the Gemara. So nobody, God forbid, live in our room or via the virtual audience, starts looking at the wife and he say, Uli, what did I do now? According to today's Gemara, half marriages will not be acceptable. So let's dissipate this doubt. We need to understand that in the time of the Talmud, certain things were done much different than they are done today or in the last few generations. Today, somebody marry a Jew, we celebrate. Doesn't matter, Kohen, Levi, Israel. You are Jewish from both sides, we are okay. Today, why? Because assimilation, as we mentioned yesterday, regretfully is alive and well. And you must, and I'll tell you this from a rabbinical perspective now, you must do your homework before marriage. You must do your research. Don't trust the names. Sure, to have a good name is good. To know the family is very good, and that's an advantage. But without names, because this is a public forum, you know how many cases I deal with from all over that sometimes people wanting to marry them or they want to be members of our synagogue from South America. They say, Rabbi, please do a research on this family. I need to marry them, and they happen to come from here. You'll be surprised how many people carry normal, good Jewish names, Sephardic or Ashkenazic names, and there is she'elot in their background. God forbid. You should never encounter such a thing because, Haz v'shalom, it could be a disastrous situation. And not all the time that situation can be repaired or can be remedied. But only I read the Gemara from Pesachim just to highlight of how careful the Hachamim were back then. Who is getting married? Oh, the daughter of a Kohen with an Israel? That's not called Sa'udah Mitzvah. I don't have to go. Today, the rabbis do go. Why they go? Because perhaps sometimes people knowing that the rabbi is coming, so they already prepare in advance. Baruch haba, Baruch haba. They already prepare in advance. Oh, the rabbi is coming, so everything is kosher. The rabbi is coming. Okay, the first half of the wedding you play only kosher music. Okay, Rabbi, how long you staying? What difference? No, for the mechitza. You know, you stay an hour, we keep the mechitza an hour. And many times, this is the shikul da'at, that is sometimes a calculation that Hachamim need to make. But if a rabbi is invited, as I said before, Rabbi, come give a shiur in the Super Bowl party. I'm making a shiur in the Super Bowl. Sounds good, sounds kosher, l'shem shamayim. But that's not a place where a rabbi is supposed to be. It's actually a Hilul Hashem, because the whole environment and the music and the partying and the commercials and the advertisement, I'm sure that you know what I'm referring to. I did not aware of the magnitude of the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was a word that I never existed. But also South America is the World Cup. Soccer once every 4 years. Soccer game, no nonsense, no advertisement, no concerts in between, nothing that is halachically problematic. Somebody said, "What's wrong?" I went to watch the basketball game. I said, "Very nice. But what did you do in the recess?" "No, they had a nice show." So that's what it creates a serious halachic problem. The Gemara goes even further. And let me tell you the story that happened back then in Argentina. A boy, which I know personally, Israel, was dating a girl that is the daughter of a Kohen. And the rabbi said, "I agree to make the ceremony for you with one condition." What condition? "I'm kosher, she's kosher. I know her from first grade. The families came back from Hala or from Sham, wherever they came from." "Yes," the rabbi said, "but she's the daughter of a Kohen." "So what, Rabbi? She's Kodesh." But what the Gemara says, who marries the daughter of a Kohen, I'm not sure if I translate this, because it's scary. I read in the Hebrew, "O almana, o gerusha, o zera ella, cobra, cobarto, o meviato, lide aniut." I'm not going to translate this, because it's a bit scary. Your wife is Kohen?
No.
Okay. You're okay. You're safe then. So the question is, why such a strong language? Or he lives before her the world, or she lives before him the world, or blessing does not come his way. Didn't we learn later on in the Gemara, connected to Beracha should connect to Aharon HaKohen? So it says that this rabbi says to him, "I'm willing to marry you with one condition, that you commit yourself to learn an hour of Torah every day." Very nice commitment. Baruch Hashem, till today, this person learns Torah based on the agreement that he made with the rabbi close to 30 years ago, if not more. And then, in my pure innocence as a child, I asked why such a commitment is required from him. So someone asked the rabbi this question, and the rabbi said, very simple. She is a daughter of a Kohen. She comes automatically with a heightened level of Kedusha, of holiness. Like it or not, Kohanim carry a certain level of holiness. The husband being in Israel, the spiritual distance between them is far. So in order to climb that spiritual ladder, he needs to learn Torah on a regular basis. I know that it sounds too holy and too angelic, or what I'm saying, but it makes a lot of sense. The Gemara. So for our practical lesson, one thing is for sure. Make sure that you marry somebody that is Yehudi, which I'm sure everybody will do that. But do your due diligence, who you want to marry, midot tovot, irat shamayim, and there is no guarantees. Okay, a person must make the ishtadlut and do the best that they can. Another concept the Gemara writes, the dangers of Hachamim to eat all over. I have seen this in the rabbinate. So it says as follows, that Kol Talmid Hacham, a Talmid Hacham that eats everywhere. You see him every day in a different restaurant. You see every day here and here, every day there. In other words, and again, the Talmud is not against people to go eat into a restaurant. Okay? But I think that the Gemara is giving a message to the Hachamim to understand. It says, okay, that they are in need for a restaurant. But you don't have to go to eat to a restaurant every day. Eat at home, because you're going to eat to a restaurant every day. Probably you're going to eat more than what you usually eat at home, because you pay for it. You want to maximize your enjoyment. But also sometimes that can be accompanied by a drinking a bit, and then a story, and then a joke, and then a laughing meeting. So then at the end of the day, the rabbi hangs around restaurants and surrounded by people that not always is what a rabbi is supposed to do. And I'm telling you this, that in the world of the rabbinate, many wonderful Talmidei Hachamim are very careful with this Gemara that we learn. But unfortunately, I knew in the past some that they will seize every opportunity to go to eat to a restaurant. And again, if you go eat to a restaurant for kiruv purposes, which in South America, it's the way to do. Sometimes it's easier to invite someone, come meet me for lunch, and you talk to the person, that if you tell the fellow, please come to the class. It's a different mentality, correct? Right?
They feel very offended.
Right.
The rabbi didn't come.
Right, correct. So the rabbi takes advantage of it. But the Gemara is trying to say, and the Gemara goes even further, and I'm not going to go more because it's very. But it says, "Betalmudo mishtakeach mimenu," and then the more he hangs around at bars and restaurants, the learning diminishes. המחלוקות רבות באות עליו ודבריו אינן נשמעים ומחלל שם שמיים בשם רבו בשם אביו. The Gemara gave like a bazooka, one after the other. Let me translate. Many arguments comes because of this. His words are not heard. He's desecrating the name of Hashem, the name of his rabbis, and the name of his teacher and his father. And it causes the creation of a negative name for him, for his children, till the day that Mashiach comes. These are heavy words. And it's about the rabbis. I could have skipped today's topic. Okay, let's talk about Shalom. Easy. But this is the menu of the day. I don't pick the menu, whatever the home brings, that's what we learn. So this is the lesson for the Hachamim, but it's also the lesson for all of us. When a person gets invited to a certain place, he needs to make a decision. Should I go? Can I go? Is it okay to go? The other day I get a question. Rabbi, I'm invited to a wedding, and there is a question in the background of the bride. Can I say Shiva Berachot? I ask him, I don't understand your question. If you're already telling me that there is a question on the background of the bride, who is marrying him and her? And how can you say Shiva Berachot if there is a she'elah on the background? The she'elah on the background, we're not talking like the Gemara in the early moments, a Kohen Levi Israel. That's not an issue. The issue is if, God forbid, there is a question. That's why in Israel, lately, for the past few years, they established a new rule. I'm not sure that it's a foolproof rule, but they are definitely trying. And I know this because I come across these situations on a regular basis, that any new family that is planning to make Aliyah, they must bring documentation and letters from Orthodox rabbis of their city that they are Yehudim, and there is no issues of conversion. Remember we discussed yesterday the Takana, that was the yahrzeit of the rabbi who established the Takana. Why the Israeli government suddenly is wanting to know that those who make Aliyah are Yehudim? Because they realized retroactively that many years ago, right, they made Aliyah free for all, and many goyim, God forbid, right, they became part of the Jewish nation, and they go to the same school system, and they go to the army, and they blend in with the society, and many of them do teshuvah, and suddenly when you're gonna marry them, no, you're a goy. Haz v'shalom. Haz v'shalom. So I told this fellow yesterday, says, I don't understand. How can you think of saying Yeshiva Berachot if there is a question on the Judaism, not of the frumkeit? We're not talking about on the level of religion. That's not debatable. We're not even talking about that. The question is if the bride is Jewish or not.
The mother is Jewish.
The mother went through a Mickey Mouse conversion.
I like that.
That's the she'elah. So I said, if you know all this, how are you going to think to say Shiva Berachot under the chuppah? No, because I said, okay. The answer is not different, I told him. The answer is not different. The answer is that regretfully, if you know this information, did you approach the rabbi who is going to marry them? You say, yeah, I approached him. And what he said to you? I took care of everything. When he started to ask, what does it mean you took care of everything? There was like, don't worry, I did everything. So he asked me, what do I do, Rabbi? He says, if you feel so strong in this matter, decline to say Shiv'a Berachot under the chuppah. But if I don't say any blessing, the family is going to get offended. I said, I have an idea. And Hashem sent me a message on the spot. I said, you know what? Say the blessing of Borei Minei Besamim. Correct? Under the chuppah. Not in the Ashkenazic world, I believe, but in the Sephardic world, under the chuppah we say, like in the Berit Milah, Borei Minei Besamim. So say Borei Minei Besamim, which is a beracha of Hana'ah, and that's it. The Borei Minei Besamim is an added feature. It's not part of the Shiv'a Berachot. I don't even know where the custom came to say Besamim under the chuppah. We understand Mosai Shabbat Besamim. We understand Friday night, Leil Shabbat Besamim. But Besamim in a Berit Milah, Besamim in a chuppah, I don't know exactly the source. But on the other hand, it can be utilized as a way to honor someone that you must honor by to say one of the Shiva Berachot. And you follow me? So he said, say Borei Minei Besamim, and this way you off the hook. And if you want me to speak to the rabbi and to do the inquiry on your behalf, let me know and I'll do it. Because Baruch Hashem, one of the good things that we have between the rabbis of the north and the south, that no one is afraid of asking for help. And that's very important in the world of the rabbinate. One of the worst things that a rabbi can do is being afraid or embarrassed of asking a question. Why? We don't know everything. Do you think we know everything? The more we learn, we realize how little do we know. And there are some cases that you have very tough and difficult questions. And you need to communicate with the bigger Hachamim, seasoned Hachamim, expert in these particular topics, to help us and to guide us accordingly. So, to summarize today's Gemara, and I repeat again, for the audience in iTorah.com and the audience by us at the Edmund J. Safra Synagogue. I read the actual text of the Talmud. The summary, 2 lessons that we learn from this Gemara of today, how strict and how strong the Gemara sounded. You have nothing to fear. As long as the person that is marrying the person is Yehudi or Yehudiah, and has a Shem Tov, has a good name, comes from a good family, has Derech Eretz, has Yirat Shamayim, has Midot Tovot, it doesn't matter. Kohen, Levi, Israel, it doesn't matter at all. As far as concerned the rabbinates, the rabbi needs to have safety guidelines. And he's supposed to say, I cannot give a shiur in the Super Bowl game. That's it. Because it's not for a place for a rabbi to go. But I guarantee you that I have audience that will say, I don't agree with what the rabbi said. And it's fine. We agree to disagree. And in some kiruv, so to speak, programs, organizations, maybe they do organize such a thing. For what purpose? To be mekarev the people. And they do mincha, and they do arvit, and they bring a seudah. You know, it's like people ask me all the time, Rabbi, can we celebrate Thanksgiving? Okay? That's always, every year, you know, you're in this world for 100 years, and every week and every year the same question. Rabbi, can we say, I didn't know that the Pasuk says, Shalosh Pe'amim B'Shana, Yira'eh Kol Zakurecha, 3 times, but not 4. So, but I said to the people, I said, if you're going to make a Thanksgiving because you have no way to escape. Your in-laws are doing it and they are forcing you to come, etc. I said, number one, make sure that everything is kasher. If it's not kasher, you're not allowed to come in, number one. Number two, try to utilize the moment to express hoda'ah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Try to organize a minyan for Mincha and Arvit. It doesn't mean that if you invite me, Rabbi, why don't you come? It sounds so good. You give the shi'ur, you give a hoda'ah, you do nishmat, you do berachot. I will not attend. I will not go because it does not go with the principles based on what the Gemara of today from Masechet Pesachim shared with us. And it says further, Tanu Rabbanan. This is the conclusion of the Gemara. Le'olam. Listen to the words of the Talmud. Forever. Sell whatever they have financially. Beisa bat Talmid Chacham. And marry the daughter of a Talmid Chacham. Again, this doesn't apply today, but in the time of the Talmud, it was a priority. Now I ask you a question. Why do you need to sell whatever you have to marry the daughter of a Talmid Chacham? So it says very simple. Sheimet, if God forbid, the husband has an early departure from the world, that means he dies before her, muftah lo, shebanav talmidei hachamim, because the mother comes from a rabbinical background, what's the daughter is going to do if God forbid the husband passes away? She's going to go to her parents. Who are the parents? Talmidei hachamim. So the grandparents are going to make sure that the grandchildren follow in the footsteps of the Torah, Mitzvot, and Yirat Shamayim. Be'alisa bat am ha'aris. And don't marry the daughter of an ignoramus, someone who has no Torah. Why not? Sheimet o gole banav am ha'aris. It says because if, God forbid, the husband leaves the world, who is going to take care of the grandkids? The grandparents. Now, who are the grandparents? Nice people, but zero knowledge of Torah. So what kind of influence they're going to give to the grandchildren? The Gemara goes further. But it repeats part of the statement, but let's clarify. Haz v'shalom, I don't want anyone to walk out of this room to start questioning your marriage. Whoever you marry, Baruch Hashem, whatever amount, celebrate, enjoy, etc. But this is definitely a message for the future generations. I mean, for all generations. We are ready. You married yet? Not yet. But you're going to marry us a decade, so I'm not worried about you, Matchav. Okay? Okay? But let's say someone that is listening to this show and is dating someone, but then he says, Uli, I don't know if the background is fully kosher. It sounds Jewish name. I got a phone call yesterday. Rabbi, we need you to do a research from Brooklyn. So what happened? We have a family name. I need you to check it out.
I know you're good with that, right?
Huh?
You're good with that.
I'm a detective.
You're very well.
So Baruch Hashem, on the spot, I said, I'm aware of this case because another rabbi called me the other day and I read the research and the due diligence. Everything is kosher, no questions whatsoever. But for example, in a certain country that shall remain nameless, there was a family that every Friday will bring the Jewish paper to their home. And they will read together the Jewish paper on the Shabbat table, which is not common. You don't bring the Yated or the Jewish Press or Mishpacha magazine to the Shabbat table. Maybe you read it after, like many of us do. But at the Shabbat table, you eat, you drink, you sing, you read words of the Perashah, etc. So when I asked this fellow, what's the source of such a peculiar minhag? There is nothing better to read than a Jewish newspaper on the Shabbat table. It says, you know what part of the newspaper I read? So what part? Not the funerals, God forbid. Marriages. The marriages that were registered to get married the following week. In South America, certain cities have these customs that every community wedding gets written up in the newspaper. Like you have in America, at the end, many times you have newspapers and you have a lot of legal notices, right? At the end of the paper, you have such a thing. You know what I'm talking about? There, that's exactly how it was. So what the father will do, will read out loud the names of the groom and the name of the bride. The name of the bride and the name of the groom. Every Friday night Shabbat Kodesh table, this was the message. What was the father illustrating? How regretfully people with Jewish sounding names were going, marrying other Yehudim. So this was how the father educated the children of being careful who they will marry in the future. Because decision of marriage that a person makes, not all the times you see the result the next day or the next week. You will see the results in a few years. That's why you need to do the homework in advance, to the due diligence, finding someone suitable that has Irat Shamayim. Forget about Kohen, Levi, Israel. I deal with a lot of shidduchim, and I get a lot of, I receive a lot of, now it's called shidduch profile. You know what that means? In your days they didn't have shidduch profile, right? Me neither. But today is very sophisticated. There is a shidduch profile, name, family, references, a small paragraph about the person, etc. Okay? And in none of them says Kohen, Levi, or Israel. In none of them says. Why? Because maybe in the time of the Talmud, that was the priority, but as the generations went by, the priority is that a person marries someone kasher, Kedat Moshe Israel, with all the tools and the background and the examples. As our rabbis tell us, you don't marry only the person. You marry the family. You marry the family. Why? The Gemara writes, and with this we'll conclude, at the end of Masechet Sukkah, I'll give you the short version. Abaye says that reactions of the children, boys and girls, are just an extension of whatever they saw in their home. So what they saw in their home was tradition, observance, mitzvot, dereches, good midot. So chances are that their offspring follows in that way. But if Haz v'Shalom they didn't see, a person needs a lot of siyata d'ishmaya, that a person is not, how do I say this, negatively affected by maybe the not so ideal types of behavior seen in their home. It doesn't mean that we write off every person, God forbid. There are dafka the opposite. There are situations that people come from challenging family background and they don't want to have that type of negative experience, so they work overtime on themselves to become better and better and better and not to repeat the nice people tell me, Rabbi, I don't want to get divorced. Okay, Mazel Tov, that's good, don't get divorced. Okay? Because my parents got divorced and I don't want to go through the same. You see what I'm saying? That sometimes people understand that whatever they saw in the younger years not always was the best scenario. Obviously, no one can deny that Haz v'Shalom, God forbid, could be situations that regretfully, a million times, divorce may be the answer. And that's why there is a concept in the Torah of giving a get. But definitely, that should not be the first line of determining what to do or what not to do. Okay, my good friends? So we'll say good day to everybody. Shavua Tov u'mevorach. Baruch Adonai לעולם. אמן ואמן. רבי חנניה בן הקשה אומר, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל. לפיכך, ירבה להם